Morning, everyone. This is Connie Myers, and I'm back with one of my amazing interviews. I have not met this woman yet, but the conversations we've had so far, I really have to. And I just found out she's coming to Las Vegas, so hopefully I'll get a chance to actually get face to face with her. Her name is Marie Incontrera, and she found me. She found me, I think, through my Kick Butt Leadership podcast, and I had to get to know her better. So welcome, Marie. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Connie.
So what's the name of your business, and kind of give us a quick overview of what it is that you do?
Sure. So the name of my business is Incontrera Consulting. Incontrera is my last name. And we are a social media podcast and a speaking consulting firm. We do social media for small businesses and individuals like executives, thought leaders, people with great content. We book people on podcasts, which is, of course, how I found you. And we book people on TEDx. So we have a coaching service for TEDx, and then we also book people. We find people spots around the country.
Awesome. Well, I went on and listened. She has 2 TED Talks, by the way, which we'll be talking about in a minute. Mm-hmm. But I loved the topics of both of them, so I can't wait to dive into that. Okay, well, the first question I always ask everybody is, were you a leader as a child?
I'd like to believe I was. I sort of grew up, I had brothers and sisters that were much older than me, so I grew up as an only child. It was just me and my mom. And so as a result, I sort of fancied myself a leader. I sort of had a very active imagination, and I had, a whole cohort of brothers and sisters in my mind and that sort of thing. So yeah, I'd like to think I'm a leader, was a leader as a child.
Is there any skill that you can think of that you had as a child that you use today?
Well, my imagination was a big thing. And I definitely use my imagination and my creativity in my everyday work as a consultant.
Uh-huh. I just realized I didn't turn my phone off, and I don't want it to ring. There we go. So what did you do prior to your consulting business?
I was a full-time musician. I got my degree in composition, and I worked for nearly a decade in both classical and jazz music. I had my own band. My band, the last performance that my band did was at Carnegie Hall. So we had a really fantastic run. It was a really great experience.
Okay, so now I have to ask you, how did you go from being a jazz musician and classical to social media and business consulting and working with business clients?
Well, funny story. So, the thing about being a musician that nobody tells you, and they don't tell you this in music school, is that you can be playing Carnegie Hall and you could be very, very successful and still be broke. And so I was a full-time musician. I was also working every odd job in creation, anything I could find, teaching music for cash, transcribing music, administrative jobs, that sort of thing. And I was broke and I was miserable as a result. I loved doing music, but also I was close to 30. I wasn't very healthy. I was eating questionable food because I was trying to eat as cheaply as possible. And I really had no life outside of my music. And so I was at this particularly difficult job, and I was really, really kind of at my wit's end. And a friend of mine who happens to be a business author and consultant, and who has been very successful at it for many, many years, texted me and she said, "I have an idea, quit your job." And I was like, what? Now, how many people in your life can say something like that to you? And and you can listen. So I sort of said, well, all right, let's see what you have to say. And she was like, well, you're not happy, you're broke, you're clearly burnt out. So why don't you become a virtual assistant? She said, set a date for 2 months from now or a month from now. start getting your clients lined up. I'll help you, and then quit your job. And the truth is that I was only making, $15,000 a year as a musician. So it wasn't that hard to recoup that income as a virtual assistant. So making that leap actually wasn't very, very difficult. And from being a virtual assistant, people started coming to me for certain things. And then eventually I raised my prices and became a consultant.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. It's there are not very many people that you would trust when they say quit your job.
Right. It's like when you're a kid and your parents, your parents say, why are you doing that? And you're like, oh, my friend told me to. Well, if your friend jumped off a bridge, would you? Well, that's essentially what I did.
Well, I'm sure that almost every entrepreneur out there can really relate to jumping off the bridge and stepping in with both feet.
Right.
So was it a success right off the bat?
It was pretty slow in the beginning. I was pretty much making what I had made as a musician pretty quickly. So it felt successful. It felt like, oh, wow, I don't even have to commute and I don't have to do this, that, and the other thing. So it grew slowly. And then eventually it just sort of became a little bit more exponential where, once I started booking people on TED Talks, everybody wanted it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's one of my dreams, is to do a TED Talk. So, well, let's talk about your 2 TED Talks, because I've listened to a lot of TED Talks, and for the first one I listened to was your one about the roller derby. And what I've forgotten, what is the name of that one?
It's Exercise and Earning Potential, I think. I think that's the official name of it, but yeah.
Well, tell us a little bit of what you talk about in that TED Talk, because it's fascinating how you can take roller derby and combine it with business. I think that's just, and you did such a beautiful job of it.
Thank you so much. And I love roller derby. I haven't had the, my mea culpa here is that I haven't had my business became so busy that I stopped having the time for it. But I still love it, and I still, skate when I can. But the premise behind it is, so I joined a team, which is a huge time commitment, and I started tracking my income, and it was fast. It was really fast, the growth that happened. And so I was really interested in it, and I sort of didn't track them both on purpose. But then I realized that, wow, I really need to do something about this. I started doing some research, and it turns out that almost every one of the world's top performers are very, very serious about their health and their fitness. Richard Branson, Mark Zuckerberg, Ariana Huffington, they all, at the beginning and end of the day, they take care of themselves first.
Well, I love what you said about they get more sleep than the CEOs of companies get more sleep than the employees do. Yeah. Because they understand the importance of getting plenty of sleep. Right, exactly. And it's on them if something goes wrong because they're tired. Right, exactly. So what do you think is the correlation between the exercise? What are the benefits that exercise gives you that help to increase your business the way it did? Well, some of them are sort of the ones you'd expect, right? If you're in an employee situation, you take fewer sick days, which means if you're an entrepreneur, you have more stamina to do the work that is required of you every day, because, being an entrepreneur is really, it's athletic. There are long hours, there are sprints involved, there's concentration, there's skill, there's conditioning involved. So, those are sort of the expected benefits. There are things like less anxiety and depression. There are things like more longevity in terms of how many years you can work. Sure. And the interesting thing is that there was a study done in the Journal of Labor Research, and employees who exercise, and we're talking about employees now, people who are hired. They go to work every day, they do the work, they're paid by the hour, or they're paid a salary. Employees in the same position who exercise,
If one person exercises and one person doesn't, the person who exercises is likely to earn 9% more than the person who doesn't.
Wow, 9%?
Yeah.
Holy
That's really significant, right?
Yes, it is.
And that's because people who exercise are better problem solvers. They're more alert. They're happier. They're creative. So exercising really makes a difference in your business.
Wow. Wow. Well, my Kick Butt Leadership, Kick Butt is all about, now I've forgotten it. Mindfulness meeting, visioning, opportunity and engagement. And one of the things I talk about is how to increase your stamina. So that makes all kinds of sense. It absolutely does.
Yeah.
So what is one takeaway? And can you talk a little bit about Dizzy? Oh, that's in the other one.
Yeah.
The quote that you had was Eleanor Roosevelt. I've actually used it a few times. It's do something what is it? Do something.
Do one thing every day that scares you.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So was roller derby scary to you when you started?
Oh yeah. It actually never stopped being scary. Because you're on wheels, you're going fast, and then somebody comes by and hits you, and there's no telling how far you're going to roll when somebody hits you. So it was very, very scary. I mean, and there were things that we had to do, like for example, skate backwards. The first time I did it, there was something about that was so scary. I actually cried in front of everybody. So it is an exercise in vulnerability, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, your other TED Talk also fascinated me, and now I kind of understand a little bit more why.
Yeah.
Because of the jazz background that you have, and boy, being able to play in Carnegie Hall is a very big deal.
Thank
you. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Do you still play it for fun in a band or anything like that?
I do. I have one of the great things about being an entrepreneur is that I don't have the time to do music full time anymore. And so I get to only take the gigs that I really like. So there's an avant-garde theater company that whenever they call, I say yes. There are a few collaborators that whenever they say, hey, I have an idea, I say yes, and everything else I'm kind of like, because, another thing about being a musician is that you kind of have to take the gigs you're not happy about sometimes.
Absolutely.
Because and it's not fun to play music you're not excited about.
Well, so I loved when you were in the TED Talk talking about Dizzy Gillespie. Can you kind of share with that story with everybody?
Yeah, sure. So Dizzy Gillespie was a young trumpet player. He was learning from his parents in the church, learning gospel music and learning how to play. And the thing about learning music in sort of the oral tradition is that it's very, very different than if you go into a conservatory and learn there. And because the conservatories at the time, they were pushing out classical musicians exclusively, because this was really before jazz, right? Before jazz was really a thing, and before it was an academic thing, for sure. And they were teaching musicians how to be good orchestral players. And when you play in an orchestra, if you play the trumpet, your tone is very specific. It has to blend well. You don't puff your cheeks. You don't, create an ugly sound. It has to be regal. It has to work well with the other brass instruments and the wind instruments and the strings, and etc. But Dizzy Gillespie, because he was learning by himself, he learned the trumpet wrong. I use big air quotes around the word wrong. And he puffed his cheeks, and that became his brand. If you Google Dizzy Gillespie, most of the pictures that you're going to find are of him with big puffed out cheeks. In fact, his whole lower face is out, and he's got the trumpet to his lips, and he's kind of like blowing to high heaven, and the sound was wrong for classical music. If you tried to put Dizzy Gillespie in an orchestra, it would be a disaster. But that sound was so unique, and it was so perfect for a jazz band that he became one of the great fathers of jazz.
Oh, absolutely. I'm a big jazz fan, so
yeah.
Next time I come to New York, I got to hear you play.
Yeah, awesome.
So how does jazz relate to business?
Well, the correlation that I found the most interesting was innovation. Jazz is really, it's never about being perfect. And the most interesting soloists are the ones who play ugly sometimes, and the ones who make mistakes and who use the notes that really aren't in the scale, because if you play too cleanly, you're considered a square, and even, I mean, I love that term. It's a silly term, but it's true. They jazz bands and jazz leaders want you to be interesting. They'd rather you be interesting than you be perfect. And even the genre itself isn't set up for perfection. Classical, you sit down, you pay a high ticket price, and you don't clap until the end. But in jazz, if you go to a club, you have a drink, you can talk, you can clap after somebody plays a solo, or you can respond to the solo. So it's innovative. And that was the thing that I took with me into business was, if you're not afraid to get a little messy, you're going to go obsolete. Right.
Right. I think that's a really important point, that you have to be okay with being messy first. I have a really good, she's part of my mastermind group that I'm a part of. And she always says, do it messy first.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she's always like doing something new, that like the first time we did a online conference together, she had never even turned on the software yet.
Right.
and so the first one was definitely messy.
Right.
But she just proves the fact that if you do it messy, first of all, you learn much quicker. And it really doesn't matter what you're doing, what kind of business you're in. If you just jump in and start doing it, then you will learn the finer points.
Right.
So, well, tell us a little bit about, you help people get into TED Talks, and you help people with podcasting. And there's a lot of people that want to get into podcasting. Sure. What is maybe one thing you could tell them is the best way to get started?
Well, be open to talking about yourself. I have a lot of people who, the first time they come to me, they'll say something like, well, I'm really shy, or, oh, I don't like talking about myself. I just want my work to get out there. Well, you have to talk about yourself. And, the other thing is be open to a conversation, right? Like, the best podcasts that I've ever listened to, and also the best podcasters out there, are the ones that have a conversation. Because at the end of the day, nobody's going to want to listen to me say, hey, buy my book, join my online course, take my consulting services. Here's the price. You should work with me because I'm the best. Like nobody wants to hear that. They want to hear what your experience is. They want to hear why you do what you do and what you're passionate about. And if that relates, then great. Then they're invited to have a conversation with you, or buy your book, or take your course, or whatever the case is.
Yeah, I honestly believe that the Facebook Live interviews like this, I think, first of all, they're the most fun.
Yeah.
And I try not to structure them too strongly because that's where the best conversation happens. Oh,
absolutely.
I do one every month with a gentleman in Australia, and just before we go live, each of us take turns. We'll pick a topic, like maybe one word, like success or meditation or something like that. And then we go live, and we have no idea where it's going to go.
Right.
And those are the best conversations ever.
Yeah. So, that sounds awesome.
Yeah. And then your social media, do you do other work in social media, or is it primarily podcasting and that sort of thing?
Well, social media is all about my philosophy behind social media, especially if you're a thought leader or you have a product or something like that, whether it's, blog readership or your own podcast or an online course or that sort of thing, is really building trust with your audience so that when it's time to sell, they'll buy. And they won't be able to think of anybody else to buy from than you. No better person, right? So to me, social media is really about all about creating brand awareness and trust and, vibrance around your product and your philosophy.
Wow. That's great. Great advice. So, and then if somebody wants, like for me, for example, when I finish my course, I want to be able to do a TED Talk.
Yeah.
How hard is it to do a TED Talk?
Well, everybody's different, and my firm gives a guarantee for the people that we pitch ourselves. So we sort of have different levels. You know, some people just want some coaching, some talk coaching, or some idea coaching. Some people want us to pitch them, and the thing about that is we come with a guarantee. So we'll do it until we get it for you. And some people, it happens right away. Some people, you know, if they have a more general idea, or it's something that, you know, might not fit universally as much as somebody else's idea, it might take, 5 or 6 months, but it's time consuming. I will say that it's time consuming because every TEDx application process is different. Some of them are really rigorous, some of them are easy, and so basically, what we're doing is not rocket science. It's really just about knowing the process.
Absolutely. Isn't that true with most things?
Yeah, absolutely. And who has the time to do it? So you might as well.
Exactly. You know what I mean? and is that in your wheelhouse? Is that something that you're good at?
Yeah, exactly.
The one thing that I've learned is that if I'm not good at something, the best thing I can do is delegate it to somebody else.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely agreed.
Well, if somebody wanted to reach out to you, how do they find you?
My website is incontrera.com. So that's incontrera.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Email me, marie.incontrera@gmail.com.
Awesome. Well, Maria, I was really looking forward to this conversation, and I want to personally thank you for sending me some of these amazing people to interview. It's been, I'm loving it.
Thank you so much.
I'm absolutely loving it. So,
thank you. And they love you. I will say that, I hear back and they're like, that was a great interview.
So, awesome. Oh, that's good to know. Thank you. Well, I really enjoyed having you, and thank you so much for joining me today. And for anybody, please reach out to her. She's an amazing lady. And I can tell you that just in watching her TED Talks, I definitely learned a couple of things to put into my process and into my work. And for me, I'm Connie Myers, and you can reach me at kickbuttleadership.com. My Facebook page is, and by the way, Connie is spelled CONI. And it's MEYERS. And you can find me on Facebook. Also, I have a founders page on there. So reach out to me if you would like to check out my courses or my books. My Crystalline Moments book is being read all around the world. I have 4 best-selling books. And join me every week right here. I try to do an interview every single week. And I also have a Saturday morning that I call To 70 and Beyond, which you don't have to be 70 to watch. So there you go. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us today. And I hope that all of you out there that are either joining us live or on the replay will have a fabulous day. And maybe you should think about taking up roller derby for your business. Just saying. Thank you so much. And we will talk to you soon. Bye now.